Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is Juan Cole, the Richard P. Mitchell Collegiate Professor of History at the University of Michigan, the author of Muhammad, Prophet of Peace Amid the Clash of Empires. And he writes for The Nation. You can find his writings at thenation.com. His website, juancole.com. You can tweet him at, is it IRI Cole? Do I have that right, Juan?
It's JRI.
JRI. I'm sorry. JRI Cole is the Twitter handle. Juan, welcome back to the program. It's been a while.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. You wrote a brilliant piece here well, it's in The Nation, in fact. And the title of it is How the Neocon Plan to Destabilize Iran Will Blow Back on the United States. I've been speculating for the last 2 hours on this program that if Trump finds himself trapped, if Mueller actually delivers indictments of Trump's children, for example, he said he probably won't indict a sitting president, but if the facts are so horrible that they, go way beyond Watergate, and Trump finds himself backed into a corner, that one of the ways out would be to provoke a domestic insurrection and declare a state of emergency, which he and Congress can do under Article 1, Section 8. At least Congress can, and suppress the rebellion. Another would be to start a war. And Iran and North Korea are real high on that list of possibilities. And it's always seemed to me that if we went to war with Iran, that would be one of those World War I kind of scenarios that would rapidly spin out of control, since Iran has actual allegiances with Russia and China. So what is your take on all this? And do you think that the Trump frantic factor plays into it? Or do you see this merely as the neocon, these efforts to have war with Iraq, or with Iran, particularly Pompeo's speech last week? Do you see these more as just an effort to kowtow to Netanyahu and the neoconservatives in the United States?
Yeah, well, when Obama was elected in 2008, and then Trump came in, the neoconservative faction really has been in the wilderness and hasn't had very much impact on U.S. foreign policy.
Well, they were badly discredited with the Iraq disaster, right?
Yes, they were discredited because they had promised us that the Iraqis would be so happy to see us, they would put garlands around the necks of our troops, and Iraq would become a democracy and a shining beacon on the hill and would transform the entire Middle East because of how great the United States would make it into.
Right.
So, yes, they went down in flames on those promises, but they're still there, and there's big money behind them, and there's big influence behind them, and they weren't completely locked out of the Obama administration. The Kagans were basically allowed to run Afghanistan. So now I think because of Trump's dislike of Iran and his withdrawal from the nuclear accord and his threats against Iran to put it under severe sanctions, the neocons have sniffed that there's, blood in the water, and they're coming out and making these arguments that Iran would be so much better off if only the United States would destabilize it.
I wrote an article about this too. It just went up on alternate.org, in which I was suggesting that if Trump needs to have a crisis, if the Democrats win the House in November, but haven't been sworn into office until January, that period of time from November through December to the first week of January is a real critical period where if we were to see something wildly out of the ordinary, a genuine black swan event, where some sort of international crisis or national crisis is provoked that could be so large that Trump could say, we can't even swear these people in. We need continuity of government. We're just going to keep everybody that we have right now right in place, and I'm declaring an emergency or whatever. That a war in Iran could do that. And Mueller is not going to deliver an indictment against Trump until after the election, which would be right after November. And I understand that Trump's sanctions of Iran go into effect the first week of December. Am I remembering that wrong?
I believe it's the first week of November.
First week of November. So it's the same week as the election. So, wow. So, you know, could we be looking at a perfect storm, or am I just like way out here in paranoid land?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's unprecedented for presidents to wag the dog, sort of trying to divert domestic problems by getting involved in big foreign affairs projects, and starting a war is one of those. Trump used to regularly accuse Obama of planning to start a war with Iran.
Yes.
Every time his opinion polls dropped, and so it's something that's obviously on his mind.
Yes.
And I think, you know, when George W. Bush met with the then Spanish Prime Minister or president before the start of the Iraq War, a transcript got leaked of their discussions, and as I remember it, one of the things they discussed was possibly taunting Iraq with a UN overflight, trying to get it to shoot it down, and so to be a pretext for then invading.
Right.
So one of the things that may happen is that out there in the Gulf, where the Fifth Fleet is stationed, there could be U.S. Behind-the-scenes provocations in hopes that Iran will take the bait. And, of course, the Iranians talk big and are very proud people, and it's not entirely impossible that Trump could get their goat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you see this playing out if Trump gets his war with Iran?
Oh, well, of course, it's a huge disaster for everybody. You know, the estimates are that if you count the health care that has to be provided to the wounded veterans, of whom there were tens of thousands, along with all of the other investments made in Iraq, and indeed we had, you know, the United States had to send back in 6,000 troops because of the rise of ISIL, which wouldn't have happened if the U.S. hadn't overthrown the Iraqi government. You're talking on the order of $6 trillion, and Iran is 3 times more populous and 3 times as large geographically as Iraq.
And massively more wealthy, far more than 3 times more wealthy.
Massively, yeah, of course. They have a much bigger GDP. Well, and moreover, a war with Iran would disrupt potentially oil deliveries, which would raise the cost of petroleum very high, and that would be an additional massive cost for industrialized countries. So, I mean, the economic impact alone on the United States could, I mean, you know, one doesn't want to use hyperbole, but it could be in the medium term crippling. I mean, it could, you know, demote the United States from its position as the premier economic and political power in the world.
So it could provoke the next Great Depression, basically. But
oh, sure.
But you know, my biggest concern is that it play out the way World War I did. You know, where one country attacking another country causes that country to reach out to its allies with whom it has mutual defense treaties. In this case, Iran would reach out to Russia and say, we've been attacked by the United States. You've got a deal that you'll protect us. We've been protecting your interests here for a long, long time, you know, in Syria, right across where you've got your only deep water port in the Mediterranean. And so, you know, come on in and help us. And now we're at war with Russia. And then Russia might reach out to China and say, come on and help us. And we'd reach out to Canada and Mexico and the NATO countries. And now you've got a hot war going on, a NATO war that could break out along the borders of Russia. This becomes World War III, and it could happen in a matter of hours or days. Or again, am I just going way too deep into the dark side here, Juan?
Well, it's a very dark vision, and obviously not completely implausible. On the other hand, Tom, one thing to keep in mind is that Russia and China are not allies of Iran. And actually, neither leadership much cares for that of Iran. The likelihood of either of them putting themselves out in any serious way for Iran is low. You know,
does Iran have other? Does Iran have? Forgive my interrupting, but we only have about a minute left here, Juan. Does Iran have other allies in the region that they could call on?
Well, it would be guerrilla allies. So the Iraqi Shiite militias, for instance, could well attack those 6,000 U.S. troops that are left in Iraq.
So, and they would mobilize Hezbollah in Lebanon and in Israel.
They would mobilize the Hazara Shiites in Afghanistan, which is already a basket case. So I think it's at that level that there would be pushback. It would be guerrilla. It would be to some extent covert, but it could be very deadly to U.S. interests.
So it would be a very messy regional conflict, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's your call for action? We're talking with Juan Cole, the history professor at the University of Michigan. What should we be doing? What do you suggest?
Well, in American politics, the elites make decisions. So you have to affect who's at the elite. Vote for anti-war candidates in November. Campaign for them. Give them money. Get out and organize anti-war protests. People, in the United States, I think the people have enormous power, and they very seldom exercise it, and I'm just puzzled as to why that is. A third of the voters are likely to vote in November. So who are those voters that will vote? Or the rich, old, cranky white people who want war. You have to offset them.
Mm. Yeah, so we all need to show up. We need to get out there. We need to get active. We need to be mobilizing. We need to be planning. We need to make sure everybody we know is registered to vote. And we need to make sure, and we need to double check and make sure that we haven't been purged off the voting rolls by this massive nationwide Republican program now to throw people off the voting rolls. Whew. A lot of work. Professor Juan Cole, thanks so much for being with us, Professor.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.